Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are talking about a health crisis that is, get this, more deadly than obesity and as bad for you as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And no, it's not some new virus, it's loneliness. We're going to dive into the science that shows why human connection isn't just a nice to have, it's something our bodies literally can't live without.
I really want to start with this quote because it flips the whole script on how we think about this stuff. We so often treat loneliness like it's some kind of personal failure, right? Like a sign you're weak. But the science tells a totally different story. That feeling, it's actually a primal survival instinct. It's an alarm system that's been hardwired into our DNA for millions of years, screaming at us that we're in danger. So let me just ask you this question. It's really the heart of everything we're talking about today. If you had to put money on the one thing that best predicts how healthy you'll be and how long you'll live, what would you pick? I mean, most of us, myself included, would probably say diet, right? Or exercise, or maybe our genes. But it turns out the real answer is something else entirely.
And that answer is social connection. Yep, the quality of your relationships is a more powerful predictor of your health and how long you live than your cholesterol, whether you smoke or drink, or how often you hit the gym. It is an absolutely staggering discovery, and it leads us right into the crisis we're all facing today.
But see, that's the huge paradox here. While connection is the best medicine we have, we're living through an age of just massive disconnection. Let's take a look at the diagnosis, and honestly, it's pretty shocking. A recent Cigna study found that a jaw-dropping 61% of Americans say they feel lonely. Now, this isn't some fringe issue affecting a handful of people. We're talking about a full-blown public health crisis. And what's really wild is that the loneliest group of all is young adults, the very generation we think of as being the most connected through technology. This slide just makes that number so real, doesn't it? It's not just a statistic. It means that if you grab any 5 people off the street, chances are 3 of them are struggling with feeling lonely. I mean, just look around you. This is something that's touching all of us.
Okay, and this is the part you really need to hear. The health risks here are no joke. Researchers have actually done the math, and being chronically lonely is just as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes. Every single day. It's deadlier than obesity. It's worse than air pollution. So we're not just talking about feeling sad. This is literally a matter of life and death.
But here's the good news. If disconnection is the poison, connection is absolutely the antidote. And the scientific proof for this is amazing. And it all starts with this legendary medical mystery.
So back in the 1960s, scientists were completely stumped by this little town in Pennsylvania called Roseto. The people living there had a death rate from heart disease that was about half of what it was everywhere else in the country. Naturally, researchers flocked to the town thinking, okay, they must have some secret diet or a lucky gene.
But what they found was the exact opposite. The folks in Roseto smoked cigars, they drank a lot of wine, and they ate things like meatballs fried in lard, all the stuff you're told not to do. And genetically, they were identical to people in nearby towns who had totally normal rates of heart disease. So what on earth was going on?
I mean, what was this invisible force field that was protecting an entire town from the #1 killer in America? Turns out, the answer had nothing to do with their individual habits or their bodies.
It was the town itself. The social fabric there was just incredibly strong. You had multiple generations living in the same house. People were constantly bumping into each other on the street, and community gatherings were a huge part of life. The researchers had to conclude that this deep sense of belonging, that was the medicine.
And the Roseto story lines up perfectly with the findings from the longest study on happiness ever done. The Harvard study of adult development followed 724 men for over 85 years, and they boiled it all down to one simple conclusion from its director: good relationships keep us happier and healthier, period.
And hey, it's not just 1 or 2 studies. A massive analysis of 148 different studies found that people with strong social bonds had a 50% higher chance of survival. Just look at this chart. That's a bigger health benefit than quitting smoking, and it's twice as protective as getting regular exercise. It's just incredible.
So you're probably asking, okay, how can a feeling have such a huge physical impact? Well, it's because loneliness isn't just in your head. It triggers a whole dangerous chain reaction inside your body.
See, when your brain senses that you're isolated, it flips into this constant threat mode.
And that kicks off a ton of damaging effects, like chronic inflammation, which is a major driver of things like heart disease and cancer. It weakens your immune system, and it floods your body with stress hormones like cortisol, which literally makes you age faster on a cellular level. So, if connection is this important, if it's literally life-saving, then why are we in the middle of a loneliness epidemic? Well, the tough truth is that our modern world has kind of systematically torn down the things that used to keep us all connected.
For starters, think about how our communities are designed. We live in these car-dependent suburbs, so we just don't have those casual, unplanned run-ins that you get in a walkable neighborhood. We basically go from our isolated house to our isolated car to our job, and there are very few community spots to just hang out in between.
And then, of course, there's the technology paradox. Sure, we might have hundreds of friends online, but we've swapped deep, real-life interactions for these shallow, screen-based ones. Let's be real, a like or a comment is a pretty terrible substitute for a real hug or a face-to-face conversation.
And finally, our whole culture screams at us to be hyper-independent, right? We're taught that needing other people is a sign of weakness, and that makes it feel so shameful to admit you're lonely or to ask for help. So people just suffer in silence, which only makes the isolation worse.
Okay, so that's the problem. And yeah, it feels pretty big, but it is not a lost cause. The good news is we can fix it. So let's turn to the solution, a simple, practical blueprint for rebuilding the connections we all so desperately need.
The research points to 3 basic steps. First, just show up consistently. Join a book club, a sports league, a volunteer group, anything that meets on a regular basis. Just being around the same people builds trust. Second, you gotta initiate. Don't wait for an invitation. Most people feel just as awkward as you do, so be the one to say, hey, wanna grab a coffee? And third, and this one's the hardest, be vulnerable. Real connection just can't happen until we take off the masks and risk sharing who we really are.
So the main point, the one thing I really hope you take away from all this, is right here. Connection is not a luxury item. It is not something that's just nice to have. It is a fundamental biological necessity. It's just as important as water, food, and sleep.
And that brings us to our final question. Because this isn't just about knowing the facts, it's about doing something with them. So who is one person? Maybe a friend you haven't talked to in a while, a family member, a neighbor? Who is one person you can reach out to? Right now, today. Your health and theirs might just depend on it.